Let's turn attention to the just concluded G20 summit in India. United States President Joe Biden has met with President Bola Tinubu to reinforce the enduring commitment to the U.S.-Nigeria relationship and to the long-standing friendship between the two countries. President Biden welcomed the Tinubu administration's steps to reform Nigeria's economy and thanked President Tinubu for his strong leadership as the chair of the Economic Community of West African States and his stance to defend and preserve democracy and the rule of law in Niger and the broader region. President Bola Tinubu also met with the heads of state of three nations identified as key partners in his economic development diplomacy drive. This was made known in a statement signed by the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Ajuri Ngilali. President Tinubu met with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, presenting an opportunity to expand ties of prosperity for the people of Nigeria, but with an approach towards ensuring the effective execution of the agreement. President Tinubu has discussions with the president of South Korea and sought the country's partnership in bringing development to Nigeria's manufacturing sector. President Tinubu also concluded his discussions at the G20 summit with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. During the meeting, Mr. President sought partnership with the Indian government to bring development to Nigeria's agriculture and technological sectors. Now, to discuss more on the G20 summit, let's speak to international and constitutional law expert Livingstone Wichi. Good to have you join us, Livingstone.
Thanks for having me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So I want to start with the meeting between President Bola Tinubu and U.S. President Joe Biden. In terms of optics and substance, how significant is that meeting?
Well, the meeting is very significant. First of all, I think I wish to congratulate Mr. President for these outcomes from the G20 meeting. He is already having quick responses in terms of partnership and FDIs, foreign direct investment opportunities coming his way. Nigeria is a very attractive bride as the biggest as the biggest democracy and economy in Africa. So in the face of a perceived collapse of the global governance structure, there is a jostle between the superpowers over control of Africa, and Nigeria is very critical, and Mr. President happens to be the captain of the ship at this very most important time in our history. I think it's all kudos to him. But again, he has to take further steps in maximizing these opportunities exhaustively by showing that the environment within the country is enabling. Indeed, Nigeria is fertile for investment, but there are some other structures that need to be put in place so that the climate also entertains these proposed investments. The U.S. is highly interested because, of course, the contentious fallout between the power blocks from the U.S.-NATO angle and that of Russia-China from the other angle coming to take possession of Africa is a huge threat. So they will make inroads into investment and strengthening their economic ties with a country like Nigeria. There is so much to deal with. We have too many potentials. But like I said, our environment needs to be reinforced and reinvented so that while these investors come in, their investments can be lasting. Because within the last couple of months, because of the economic downturn and the effect of some of the recent policies, we've had winding up of certain businesses that have left Nigeria, a couple of them. No doubt we'll have a few repercussions for these policies, much as it has its own long-term benefits. But we'll have to really do more to create sustainability for some of these proposed investments in Nigeria. So America is a good partner,
I think that,
but we must now...
I think that you're already speaking to the point I was going to raise, because a part of our introduction to this conversation did say that the president was doing this with an approach toward ensuring the effective execution of these agreements. And you've already spoken to that. But I also wanted to ask about, because it seemed like the president was quite deliberate, in this visit, with all of the meetings that were held on the sidelines of the G20 summit. Now that the African Union has been given a permanent seat, how significant is that as well? And is that something that African countries can take advantage of in terms of trade?
Yes, the African continent has always been treated like a third-party continent, or a third-class continent, as it were. We have been seen as developing or underdeveloped, as people wish to call it. We have been subjected to the approvals of Eurocentrism, which some of us have, guided against. But you see, we must hold our dignity very firm. The permanent seat status of the African Union at the G20 is a strong position, because we now have a contemporary and equal status with the European Union, which is the only regional bloc membership with full options available to them. Now, the African Union has that type of status. So by implication, just as President William Ruto made a case in Paris during the meeting with the French president, the need for reforms within the global financial structure, that there is the need to review or create a new system where Africa can have equal stake with other foreign states. It is important for the G20, particularly the African Union, to now develop modalities on how to assert their stake, and not to see this coronation as a ceremonial coronation, but as a statutory coronation as of right, where they are beginning to advance our own economic agenda, our own economic interests as a manufacturing continent with a massive export potential, which is where the issue of the Africa Free Trade Zone arrangement comes in. We should break down the borders across Africa so that trade can freely flow, and we make huge contributions to the global economy, and not just to be seen as a playground for the superpowers who come here to plow our resources, process them, and get them back to us. So at this point, we can make contributions with respect to forming policies that will be of the highest interest and advantage of the African states involved in trade, because the G20 is the biggest trade driving organization in the world, an intergovernmental organization, which is why it is being viewed as a threat to other trade institutions around the world. This is the biggest table.
Absolutely, and I remember, I think it was a meeting. Livingston, I think it was a meeting in Kenya where President Tinubu also said that, look, Africa will now come to the table as a partner. And I hope that, that happens in the course of this permanent membership. Thank you so much for talking to us. Always a pleasure. International and constitutional law expert, Livingston Weche.